Hey, Steve, can you hear me?
Hello.
Hi,
Hello, Gregory. How are you?
I am fine, thank you. I'm here in the car. Realized that if I'm at the park, I was home and I'm gonna go jogging here in the park, but I was gonna sit out in the park, but then I thought, well, I'll have to put the mask on, and so I'll just stay in the car to do the interview. So I won't
Oh,
have
no
my
problem.
I
No
was gonna have the
problem. No problem. The important thing that is you are not driving.
no. I am not driving. That would be
So,
quite a Zoom talk.
nice to see you after a long time. In a screen. Sometimes we listen each other by WhatsApp. We discuss about what's going on in Italy and USA, especially in this year. And now is a good occasion for talking about a little bit about what is going on there. And of course, I would like, I mean, no, no, I would like to say that you are now in California right now, right?
Yep. Santa Monica, yep.
And uh, and above all, now in Italy, where I am, is 9 o'clock p.m. On the contrary, you are noontime, right?
Yep, 12:01 p.m.
How is the weather today?
This is California, so we're not happy if it's below 75. And it's been more like in the 60s. And I was here in the park the other day with a friend, and a friend of mine from Colorado sent me a picture of showing the rest of the country when it's 60 degrees. They're outside in shorts and feeling happy. And in California, when it's 60 degrees, we have sweaters on and we say we're chilly and freezing. So from a California point of view, it's been kind of chilly because we had a really nice spell where it was 70, 80 degrees I think it was over 70 degrees for 200 days through the fall. But it's been chillier. And because I'm closer to the ocean, there's an ocean breeze. But I will say, considering that the rest of the country's been getting really bad snowstorms, I mean,
And
we're obviously a lot. Yeah.
considering also that I can tell you that here in Italy is a week very cold, like around the zero. So
Wow. Yeah.
anyway, I
We have a warped sense of reality in California. But
exactly.
nonetheless, it does feel chilly when it's only 60. I know that sounds weird compared to the rest of the world, but to a Californian, it seems chilly when it's like this. But
Sure. I
I'm
would
glad
like
I'm not in
to.
Chicago.
Yeah. Chicago is much more colder, of course, right?
Yeah, I love Chicago. I was telling friends, I was looking at a video of Chicago the other day on YouTube, somebody talking about the pros and cons of living in Chicago. And I thought, oh, what a great city. And then they cut to the winter part. And I thought, okay, there's a reason I'm in California.
Of course.
Chicago's a great city in the summertime,
Exactly.
but
Exactly. Okay. Um, as you know, I would like to know. I put down some question that maybe the audience also here in Italy and would like to know because mm, you are, of course, a journalist, so you are more attentive, and of course, you have a more. I mean, you are more aware of the what is going on about the news and what is happening. That's why I am happy to interview because you can maybe we are always listening left and right news also from America or what is going on and for example the curiosity that suddenly starting in our mind from Europe is for example, how is going on the situation, for example, of a pandemic in California in this moment? What is the stage?
sure. Well, there are some good resources online. Google has them, Johns Hopkins, Bloomberg, and really for months now, or well, probably since almost just after the start of the pandemic, I've often go online and check the rates daily. So I actually do follow this pretty closely. And the good news is, as of today, California had a 7-day average of about 8,400 cases. That was down from, we were at what, 50,000 cases a day. Anyway, to make a long story short, we are now below where we were in July.
Of
And
course.
in July, it got up to about 10,000 cases for a 7-day average. So this is the first time. So, in the summer when we got to 10,000, everybody thought that was horrible because California had done really well. The rate was low. Then it spiked to 10,000. Then it dropped again. Then in the fall, and I think it was the same in Italy or the rest of the world, we had this enormous spike where it went so much higher
Exactly.
than anyone had ever seen. But now, so we had a crazy spike where it went up to like 50,000 cases a week, or average, 7-day average. And so if you look at the curve, it's like in the beginning when they showed what would happen if you didn't do anything. There was that really big spike. Well, anyway, we had an enormous spike in December and January, and now it's just plummeting. It's like straight down. It's just dropping intensely, which is fantastic. That's what you want to see. So there's some good news, it looks like.
Yeah, the same happened also in Italy, but also in all Europe, because in the summer, especially Italy, we were a little bit taking a breath because I mean the curves started also here to flat down, and so we started to go to vacation. I mean, to have the perception of some freedom and of some return of I mean, to going out from the tunnel. But as you know, and as everybody knows, usually the pandemic has a second wave. So it happens
Yeah.
what they predict, that in the winter.
Well, I was just reading that in the paper. So, part of me, I wonder if hopefully it's not, well, maybe hopefully it is alarmist reporting. I was reading an article today saying that, okay, well, the COVID rates are dropping really fast, but experts are worried that there could be another round or another wave, or, one of these other variants. I suppose that's possible, but I really think, and this is just speculation. I don't claim to, number one, predict the future, and number two, to be a medical expert, but just having followed this, I would say that with the vaccine out there, um, it's really just a matter of time at this point when we do get back to normal. So, I mean, I'm assuming, that there was a seasonal component to this. There was a question in the beginning, was it seasonal or not? Well, we just saw this enormous spike in December and January, so it looks as though there was a seasonal component, and we're coming out of that. So I personally, I mean, it seems to me when you look at the graph, it looks as though the worst is behind us. But if that, I don't claim to say that that couldn't change tomorrow, and people have said, well, it could get worse again. But I think that because the winter season is, even here in California, is quickly getting behind us, but with the vaccine out there, I think that until maybe next fall, and even then, I think it won't be as bad because at that point the vaccine will have been rolled out so much further to so many more people. Um, but we'll see. I mean,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
that's
yeah.
complete speculation on my part, but at least the graph is encouraging because it's just plummeting so much.
Exactly. And I've heard that also USA has started a very massive vaccination process. Even here in Italy and Europe started, but I mean not so quickly. I mean, I guess I think as a USA, uh, you can confirm how is going on, for example, in California, the process. Do you think they are on track?
Yeah, well, so I did my homework and I wanted to have the figures for you. So as of, this is from Bloomberg, says that as of today, about 55 million people in the US have been vaccinated, about 16.6 doses per 100 people. And that is total doses. The number of people that would have, that doesn't mean 15 more million people have had both doses of the vaccine. So for instance, in California, to answer your question, we started out kind of rocky. I think California was kind of slow comparatively. We were not doing the greatest rolling it out. But as of today, um, 6.2 million Californians have had at least one dose of the vaccine. That's 11.4%. I think that'd be correct to say percent. Um, and the second, people have had the second dose would be 3.3%. So 11.4% of Californians have had the first dose, 3.3% have had the second dose. And that's about 6.2 million people overall. And that's about, I was looking, we're doing better than the other big states like Texas, Florida, New York. we're not the highest percentage. There are some states like Virginia, Arizona, Indiana, Massachusetts, Wisconsin that have more than the 12%, but we're probably about average. We're actually pretty good for a big state at the moment. It was starting out kind of slow. Um, there is a political component to this. I don't know if you've heard about our recall initiative here, but there's an effort underway to recall our governor in
Yeah,
California.
yeah, I've heard that,
Um,
but I don't I mean, get very well the word recall. What does it mean?
yeah,
That
well, yeah, and I need to even double check some of the specifics of what exactly happens because it's been a while since we've had a recall. But the public, if you get enough signatures based on how many people voted in the election, I think it was 1.5 million signatures you needed. And they reached that on Friday, by the way. They have 1.5 million signatures. They're going to keep going till they get 1.8 million signatures because they have to verify the signatures. And sometimes, they turn out to be fake, phony, dead, wrong people, not, whatever. They just can't verify. They throw some out. So they're going to get 1.8 million signatures. They have until the middle of March, I believe.
yeah,
So that means that the recall initiative will happen. And I believe it said it would be probably this summer, May, June, or by summertime, we'll have an election
but you think
and
that
people will decide.
but do you think that this process is started because I mean there are many complaints about the mayor, the governor.
Probably both. Here in Los Angeles, probably the governor and the mayor. But yeah, no, you're right, exactly. And that's one reason what I mentioned with the vaccine rollout, because it was slow in the beginning. Um, and because of this recall measure, I think there's been a lot of pressure to ramp up the vaccine rollout to increase it. So I think that's one reason our numbers have been getting better lately, because there is a lot of political pressure on the governor
Yeah,
to
yeah,
do
yeah.
better. There's also a lot of controversy about things like he was caught in a restaurant eating out when we have a lockdown order, and
I remember
you
without a mask.
know, um,
No, also
yeah,
because,
yeah,
mostly because
and,
he
and
was
and that's the thing, yeah. So and the other thing is the schools. The schools are still closed. Pretty much the public schools in California, or at least in the big cities like Los Angeles. The Los Angeles County Health Department just announced yesterday that they are repealing. They said it's okay to open. The CDC said it's okay to open, the LA County Department of Health. However, the school board, I was just reading the latest headlines, is still negotiating with the teachers union. The teachers are not crazy about going back. So the county has said, yes, you can open, but the schools have not said when they will open immediately.
and I heard
And so that's because that's also part of this recall initiative. Some
I
people are
understand.
upset that the schools are not open.
I understand. In fact,
So
when you speak about school, you are talking about also elementary school because I've heard about that. Even the first elementary
yeah,
school, because you in Italy,
right.
for example,
Yes,
the
absolutely.
in Italy we have, for example, elementary school are open because and maybe there are some classes of the high school stay home to for with remote lessons and obviously also the university. So
Yeah, Los Angeles, the schools have been closed since the start of the pandemic. They've never reopened, except, well, okay, and this is part of the problem. I was checking, 300 schools have applied for waivers in Los Angeles County. I believe mostly those are, some of them are public, but a lot of them are private schools and maybe even religious schools. So there is some question about the fact that it's like, okay, well, the private schools are open, but the public schools aren't. And then there's the question of, well, does that mean that, let's say, the rich kids are in school and the poor kids aren't, or this kind of a thing, or the average kids aren't? So that's one reason too. There's been criticism. However, I was just checking in Harvard Westlake, which is really probably the most prestigious school in Los Angeles, is not open, as I understand it, for in-person teaching. I think they're doing it all remote. But aside from them, I think quite a few private schools are open. And so that's part of the debate is, the private schools are open, but the public schools aren't.
yeah,
So if you don't pay to send your kid to private school, you're doing the Zoom thing.
And another important question that I would like to know, that maybe here also they would like to know, is, for example, in Italy, we had the different regions, north, the middle, and the south, about the different regions, and they were, I mean, closed in a different way. They were locked down in a different way. Depends on some health parameters. So, for example, I am in Milan, and which is Lombardy regions, who was hit very hard from the pandemic, and so we stayed a long time in under the red color, which is the most rigid lockdown. But other where the parameters were less severe, were in a different color. For example, we have orange or yellow. Yellow, of course, is the lighter type of lockdown. And for example, do you see? Did you have the same kind of different lockdown in USA?
Well, yeah, and that also gets a bit political. So yes, California also had, well, each state has been doing, kind of their own thing, but here in California, there is this kind of a color-coded thing. We had a statewide lockdown, even though a lot of it's been handled by the counties. The Los Angeles County or San Francisco or San Diego have each been kind of doing their own thing, depending on where the state guidelines are. When it got worse in December and January, or really since November, the state imposed another like statewide lockdown on top of the local restrictions. However, because of the recall measure, the state just lifted its like complete lockdown and it went back to more of the local type of thing. So there was a question about, was this political because of the recall measure? It is true that the cases are dropping as well. But so you're right. So there is a color-coded scheme, though, even without the statewide thing, there are these county restrictions depending on what your county's color is. But this is easy or bad depending on your point of view. Because Los Angeles, it's got to be true. From the start of the pandemic, we have been the most locked down county in the most locked down state in the country.
I
So
remember
we have
because
never, yeah, we are more locked down than anyone in California, any other county, or maybe it's sometimes other counties joined us, but we have always been at the maximum and across the nation.
yeah, yeah.
So we are really the place that is the most locked down. So our perspective is a little bit skewed out here because we've been in a total lock. I mean, in at the highest level since the beginning of the pandemic.
So you're talking. I remember that every time we talk each other, you told me that you were in lockdown, so many months. And for example, what happened to all that kind of business, like restaurants closed so many months? And of course, as you know, I'm in a fitness industry. Also, gyms, health club closed. You told me that many of them closed the business also.
Yeah. So I'll mention a couple of kinds of businesses. I checked just before this we started to make sure. I thought restaurants were still closed, but actually, as of about 2 weeks ago, or toward the end of January, LA County announced that outdoor dining could resume. So even though we've been the most restricted county in the most restrictive state, but there have been some changes over time. There were points when we even had some indoor dining for a short time, and then it went down back to outdoor only. Then they stopped, and then it was takeaway only. Now they're back to outdoor dining only. So that is back. You can dine outdoor at restaurants. Gyms have been closed from the start of the lockdown. As time has gone on, more gyms um, are doing outdoor workouts, so you cannot work out in the building.
Yeah.
However, not all gyms are set up for that. If you're in a very busy area, there may not be room to set up your gym on the sidewalk outside the building. A lot of gyms, well, I don't know the percentage, but a, a lot of restaurants and gyms have gone out of business. I mean, I don't know the exact numbers, but every once in a while you read something, like some restaurant that was an LA institution that had been here forever was going out of business. So restaurants have been hit very hard. The gyms, I will say, I guess I won't say too much. Um, Not all businesses follow the regulations strictly.
Uh-huh.
So we had this, for instance, hair salons are open again. You can be inside and get a haircut with the mask and social
Yeah, of course.
distancing.
Same in Italy.
There was a time, even during when they weren't supposed to be open, some did open. And the same thing with gyms. There are some gyms, the news has done some stories about it occasionally, a small percent. I mean, it's not most gyms, but there are, I guess, what you would call illegal gyms that where you
So
can work out
they
inside.
so they have a ticket from the police, I guess.
Well, I don't know the exact enforcement. But what you have to remember is, I mean, what I've read all along, remember, LA County is a very big county with, 10 million people and a lot of businesses, and there are only so many people from the county or even the police. I think they actually set up a special business enforcement team, and first they would go around and talk to the business and try to. The mayor at some point had threatened to cut off the power to businesses if they weren't following the restrictions. That was earlier. Again, a lot of businesses, I think restaurants mostly been following it. But that said, so they do take steps to enforce it, but certainly there are some businesses that have not been following all of the regulations. It's sort of like during Prohibition,
Yeah,
when alcohol was
yeah, I
illegal.
remember.
ev-
Al Capone.
Eventually, yeah, you had the bootleg, the underground, and that's kind of one of the risks of this sort of a pandemic. The longer it goes on, you probably will see potentially more. Well, fortunately our case numbers are dropping, the vaccines out there, but you could start getting to see more underground kind of activity. And
Here,
one thing I'll just, well, I was going to
yeah,
say, around New Year's time, there were some stories in the news about the police did go out and arrest some people. There were huge New Year's Eve parties,
I,
and they
I,
actually did go out and
I
arrest some
heard.
people then.
I heard
So,
about it. Here in Italy, more than uncover. Restaurants open. There are some kind of protest. They are open and very and they are shout loud that they are open for protest. We had some of these cases because we arrived at the point where especially those kind of business and owners of the restaurants and all this department are at this moment are very very drained and very tired, and so
yeah.
as very also tired from economically and psychologically of what they have passed through.
Yeah, and I do want to say though, I don't mean to suggest. I mean, I think most businesses are following, and so a lot of businesses are hurting. I mean, it's not like they're operating underground. A lot of places have just gone out of business. When I think the Third Street Promenade in Santa Monica, which has long been one of the most popular areas in Los Angeles, and as of a few months ago, oh gosh, what was it? Was it
I
25 or
remember
30?
you make a video.
Yes, yes, I did. Yeah. I mean, something like the vacancy rate there is something like 25 or 30%. And that is actually kind of scary when you think about it, because I remember when I first moved to California, they never had a vacancy rate. If a store announced it was going to leave,
Suddenly there is a
they had 10
replacement.
people. There were 10 businesses lined up to take the spot as soon as before the place closed, somebody else was planning to move in.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Now the promenade, Bloomingdale's one of at the mall. There's the promenade with little stores, and then the mall at the end with big stores. Bloomingdale's just announced it's going to close in Santa Monica. So your anchor department stores are closing as well. So yeah, a lot of things have closed, and it's not really clear how quickly those would come back, even if the pandemic ended tomorrow. it's not really clear if they're going to be able to fill those spots, And the other thing is, again, going back to the recall measure. So this is California. We have all these restrictions, and the politicians are all saying, wear your mask, don't do this, don't do that. But we keep having politicians being caught, like the governor out eating. The mayor of San Francisco was caught. One of the LA County Board of Supervisors was caught. Well, she voted to close the restaurants, but before the ban took effect the next day, she went out and ate in public and on the promenade and got caught. So there's been a lot of, let's say, hypocrisy.
Yeah,
And so
yeah,
people start to question, it's like, well, even when our politicians, they're making the rules, but they're not really following them in some cases, or not completely, but they're telling you should follow them.
yeah, yeah,
So, and that's why we're having this recall measure as part
yeah,
of
yeah,
what's
of course.
driving it.
Well, you did.
And it's not entirely partisan. It's not just Republicans. You're actually getting Democrats this is a Democratic state.
I
You're
mean,
getting Democrats who are criticizing the
I
governor.
mean, it's such a big and evident mistake that nobody can deny what he did.
Yeah.
In
Yeah.
your opinion, Gregory, now that is started finally this vaccination process, what is, in your opinion, the perception, the feeling of the people? I mean, there is some kind of more optimism, vision of that finally we are going well.
Well, I think so. It's interesting because it's hard for me maybe to speak to everyone overall, but I would just say, certainly I'm, feel better that I think it's, because the vaccine is out there and it's been shown to be tremendously effective, even more maybe than they suspected. There was a study in Israel that I read about the other day where 500,000 people who had the vaccine, of the 500,000 people that they studied who got the vaccine, only 500 ended up getting coronavirus, which is 0.1%, which is even more effective than they were suspecting. So I think the light is at the end of the tunnel. So this is not necessarily California, but I've been talking to friends and family and people in other places online sometimes, and there have been people who've been concerned about getting the vaccine, either because of reactions. My own feeling is I've been following the vaccine rollout on Bloomberg, has a nice website that shows how many people worldwide in the US and in California have the vaccine. And I think at this point, something like 176 million people worldwide have gotten the vaccine. From my point of view, I didn't necessarily want to be the first person to line up to get it, but because even in the US, 54 million people have had the vaccine, a lot of times I think in medical studies, maybe 20,000 would be a big sample. But in this
Yeah.
point, you're talking a couple 100 million people practically have had the vaccine. So I personally feel that it's very safe. And also as a journalist, but also a media critic, I'm always kind of watching the media coverage, and I'm a little bit concerned that, well, I mean, it's part of the truth and should be reported, but there are some sensationalistic stories sometimes about when people have reactions to the vaccine, which has been a very small percentage of cases. And so then sometimes I won't give names, but I'll talk to people who maybe are in risk categories, and they're concerned about getting the vaccine because they hear there've been reactions, but it's like 6 people out of, like
Yeah, no, it's
10
a
million or
typical
something.
happen.
So there,
Also, here in Italy, they try to make this news like a sensation because it would, you know, my country in the end is similar to your country in this field. I mean, some journalists they wanted to make the sensational news, but fortunately, the science helps us, knowing that the statistics say that this maybe reaction is normal. I mean, it's
yeah.
not
And usually I think it's people, often I think it was people even who had a history of having reactions. So if you don't have a history, I mean,
exactly.
no, but and I really think even just from an ethical point of view, if a journalist is going to do that kind of a story very close to the lead or the start of the story, if you talk about those adverse reactions, you really do need to provide statistics or context and say again,
Exactly.
it's 5 people out of 10 million or something. You need to be very clear up front that it's a very small percentage of people, and not just try to scare people with the
Exactly,
reporting.
because also here in Italy, we, all the people is sick and tired of this kind of terrorism, media terrorism, because they play a lot with this kind of information, disinformation.
it is, there is some fear mongering, even today, like I said, I was reading, it said like COVID cases are down 64% from last month, or, plunging. But again, they're trying to get you worried about the new variants, but the cases are just plummeting. So, there's always something to worry about. I mean, I'm not saying, yes, we want to be aware of these things and think about it, but we don't want to live in terror or the sky is falling. I mean, it actually looks as though we're at a point of improvement, I would say, with the vaccine out there. So I don't think that, the end of the world is here at this point. We've probably been through the worst of it. But also, though, to answer the rest of your question, though, what people think about the vaccine, though, I have read some media stories which probably seem to be truthful, um, that there's a fairly high or maybe a scary percentage of people who are worried about the vaccine and aren't getting it, even healthcare workers. I've read that, for instance, even in certain communities that they say are more at risk, maybe Blacks or Hispanics, who may be, I think a lot of healthcare workers, at least in Los Angeles, are Black or Hispanic. Um, and they weren't getting the vaccine. And so that's another concern, is that, if it's out there, but people aren't getting it. So I'm not personally worried about it, but I think there are people who have some hesitations about it. And I don't know
Yeah,
how
yeah,
that's
yeah,
going to
yeah.
play out.
And another curiosity, for example, here in Italy, I mean, is arriving many brands of vaccine. Like the first arrived was Pfizer, but we have also other important company, among which also Italian one, like AstraZeneca, oppure other name of company that produce vaccine. Is the same in USA or only Pfizer?
I think, I believe it's mostly Pfizer and Moderna, I
Moderna,
think, are
right?
pretty much what's being rolled out in the US. I've read that Johnson and Johnson has applied for permission or is going through there are other
Yeah,
ones coming, but I don't think we have the Oxford one that you mentioned,
uh,
the Astra. Yeah, that
AstraZeneca.
one.
AstraZeneca.
Yeah, that is not here as far as I know, or if so, it's not being rolled out in a big way. I read.
AstraZeneca is started also to be distributed in UK, for example.
Yeah, I think it's maybe because it was developed there or partly developed there,
Yeah,
but yeah,
yeah.
that's slower to reach the US. I think it's really Pfizer and Moderna. And to my knowledge, we don't have, like the Russian one, Sputnik, or anything like that, the Chinese one, or I think, there's been hesitancy about some of the other ones from other countries, or at least maybe because we didn't know if well, I just read that maybe there are some peer reviewed studies now for the Russian one that show it actually is effective. But I think there weren't the peer reviewed studies that people wanted to see for some of these other vaccines. So
Okay. And the last question of this our nice interview and talk is that I write down is now that you have the new president Biden, how is the reaction of the American regarding wearing masks, social distancing? We all know the president is more rigid in the implementation of these rules.
yeah, and I was thinking, again, let's say there's the American reaction, which would be harder for me to say, and then the California reaction. And the reason I say this is, I'll go back to my earlier point that, we're the most locked down county and the most locked down state in the country. So we've been wearing masks from the beginning.
Excuse me if I
So
interrupt you, but you wearing mask, but you all were very, I mean, um, diligent and I mean, this with discipline or 50% wearing mask and not. And the
Well,
other,
it's probably, I mean, I think actually we're at a point now, for instance, I notice here in the park that, pretty much everyone has it. And every once in a while, they'll have code enforcement people go through and remind people, not the police, but like a city people, more of a voluntary compliance thing, reminding people. But that said, yeah, I think actually the mask wearing might be better now than it was even earlier in the pandemic in some ways, when maybe it was 50-50 or 75-25. But that said, so California, for instance, and so my point is that, but when I look at videos from Florida or Ohio, Florida's made a point of being more open than California. So I don't know that that's I can't really tell you what people are doing in Florida, but I would just say Biden didn't really make a big difference in California because, well, that's the other thing that's been misleading about this, that there has been a lot of talk about what Trump was doing or what Biden's doing, but really the pandemic has really been handled on the local level, at the county level or the state level. And so, Florida has one philosophy and California has another, and Ohio has another, or New York. And so, again, I think Biden was talking about maybe having restrictions for California or Florida. I didn't read all those news stories, but I know the governor of Florida was reacting about that. Um, but my point being, so it's more of maybe a figurehead. I mean, I know, like he said, he is more vocal about wearing the mask, but here in California, from a day-to-day point of view, it really hasn't changed anything because we've been wearing masks all along anyway, even under Trump. So it
Okay.
really didn't change. Like I say, there have been times when people were maybe better or worse about it. But I think that, yeah, actually in California, people have been following that pretty well. I mean, like, for instance, in the stores, even if sometimes if you see people without it outside when they're at a distance, if you want to go in a store, you've got to have the mask on.
Ah,
The
okay,
store
okay.
will say,
I've
where's
heard,
your mask?
I've read, how can I say, I watched some videos of, big fighting of people that doesn't want to wear mask, and then, they wear like a pull it out, or like people fighting for that.
Even here in the park, my park where I go jogging every day, in California, where people are wearing it, you do sometimes see. I may have sent you the video where I saw a fight one day. There was a guy working out by himself off to the side. He really was not close to anyone, but someone across the park saw that he did not have a mask on and confronted him. And so there have been mass fights or arguments. I've heard people yell about it. Again, even here in California, it has become political. Again, most people are following it. Um, Well, I'll just say, one day, so I've been wearing the mask every day. I do wear it when I go jogging,
Yeah.
but I had been jogging. I wore the mask, but I went off and sat by a tree, more than 50 feet from
Ah,
anyone.
but for
And I was
example,
sitting there and I took the mask off, and code enforcement came around and said, "Would you put your mask on?" And I was not within like 50 or 100 feet of anyone. And so I left the park at that point. But again, even since then, it's been too chilly to sit there, so I haven't been doing that. But most days I have, but just the one day I pulled it down and then somebody said something. I don't know what the science is that says if you're outdoors and you're 100 feet from someone, do you really need a mask
no,
on?
in fact,
That's,
for example, here when you are, doing sport activity outdoor, in that moment you cannot wear a mask unless you are very close to one. But when you stop the activity, you have to wear. In
yeah,
USA,
and as I say, and we do, but there have been fights. It has become political in some cases. There have been protests in certain areas, even I think in Orange County or even here in LA County. And as you said, even everything from the restaurants, have been fighting some of the restrictions. There have been lawsuits, people have been suing over this. We just had a lawsuit over our churches. In fact, the Supreme Court ruled that California violated, they had to allow the churches to reopen, at least
yeah.
partly. So
But for
yeah, there have
example,
been lawsuits, there have been protests. I don't mean to, there have been a lot of controversies along the way. Um,
okay,
but I think if you ask that same question to someone in Florida, let's say about maybe what Biden, and maybe they would tell you it didn't matter there either because maybe Florida's still doing its own thing. But I think that there would be some regional differences. But California, we are definitely, if anyone is locked down in the US, we are locked down, is what I can say.
yeah,
So
yeah,
it
yeah,
would be
yeah.
hard to be more locked down than Los Angeles is.
Okay, okay. So, Gregory, we had a nice conversation, and for the moment, I thank you very much. It was a pretty, you let me understand a little bit better, and especially also the audience here in Europe and Italy, what is going on
Well, thank you.
in your. Of course, we are talking about California because USA is so big, and of course there are, from what we understood, obviously there are different situation depends of the government.
Yep. Yeah, it definitely, there are differences across the country, that's for sure. But I hope things are getting better in Italy as well. It sounds like maybe, what's the mood in Italy, if I may ask you that before we
But
end the.
in Italy, for example, now finally, 90% of the regions are in code yellow, which is um, a code that allow you to go out in the city, move inside your region. We cannot move from a region to another regions. For example, I am in the north. I cannot go to Rome, for example, unless I have a special permit of work. A restaurant are open, of course, during lunch, and they have to close to serving around 6 p.m. After 6 p.m. they cannot close anyway, and and above all, after the 10 p.m. there is a curfew.
Oh.
I mean, you cannot go outside in the street after the 10 p.m. How is the same in California, or you can move anyway at any time?
We've had we've had curfews. I actually can't remember if there's an official curfew. I would just say stuff isn't open late anyway, though. I don't think you'd find anything open here after 10 o'clock at this point. So I don't know if there's still an official curfew, but I would just say that well, I can't remember if that is the official guidelines, that stuff isn't supposed to be, but all I know is there's not any, you wouldn't really find stuff open after 10 o'clock. Well, maybe some of the grocery stores, but as far as restaurants and things.
I mean, if you go around, if you go out at 11 p.m. And you see nobody, maybe you understand that there is a curfew. What do you think?
Yeah, well, it's not, I mean, we've had official restrictions like, when you were supposed to be at home and not go out. It's not quite like in the beginning of the lockdown, if it wasn't essential, you were supposed to stay home. That part has been relaxed some. But I would just say, though, that things are a lot quieter in the evening. As far as travel, I don't know, again, if we had points when, if you came from another state, you were supposed to quarantine and all this, or going to another state, maybe you're from California. I haven't been traveling during the pandemic. I didn't go home for Christmas. I had a plane ticket. I'm probably going to reschedule again. I was hoping to go home soon, but I may have to push it back further. I asked a pilot friend of mine this a few months ago, and he said, well, business had been really hit hard, but then it was bouncing back. But then when things got worse again, it dropped again. So I think travel is just down. I think people, may travel lower than it normally would be. Again, whether it's voluntary or required is another story. But yeah, but I would just say that people in general, we don't need like a special permit or something the way you've been saying. I think, if I wanted to get on the road, I guess I'd go up into Northern California, I could, but
for example,
people are just traveling less voluntarily.
For example, Gregory, if you wanted to travel, take a plane and go to New York, you can go as before. No permission or something like that.
Boy, I'd need to double check. Like I say, at this point, I do have a ticket, which I'm probably going to move back, and I would have been going in about a week to Ohio, but I'll probably push that back. My parents are still getting the second round of the vaccine. I think you can. It's discouraged, probably. I don't know if they still say essential travel only, but I think you could do it if people have done it. But again, I just think, though, that I think the flight volume is down a lot from what it normally would be, though.
By the way, we are touching a very important point, which is the tourism. Tourism, especially in Italy, also all the historical sites that leaves 90% from the tourism were very knocked out. And I guess also.
Do you have any tourists? I mean, I'm assuming you have no American tourists, right?
No, absolutely. It was like the last summer, even if it was a little bit open, more Italy. It was essentially local tourism, all Italians. And I guess also in USA, who travels? The last summer, Italy couldn't move at all from. Couldn't fly at all to USA, so like the rest of the Europe.
Yeah, and the thing is, even if you did, as I told a friend of mine from Sweden who was going to visit just before the lockdown happened, or right when it was happening, and the travel restrictions were kicking in when you couldn't fly. And those the international restrictions may be still in place. It's more the domestic, I think, that's a little bit more open. But I think that Trump had removed it, but I think Biden put it back. So I think that the international travel is more heavily regulated than the domestic or within California would be. But that said, even if you came here, Disneyland is still closed, the museums are
Yeah, yeah,
closed.
yeah.
You wouldn't, there wouldn't
All
really be much to do. Well, you could go to the beach, but I mean, there's not a whole lot going on that you would ordinarily do if you came to Los Angeles. So there's that, and the same thing I think for Europe, that even if you got there, probably everything would be closed in effect,
and,
the
and
historical
imagine,
sites, as you said.
Gregory, imagine also all the hotel industry. Great hit.
Yep.
No, no, I mean, no work travel, job travel, no holiday travel. I mean, is I mean, a field of the business that was very heated, like others. I mean,
I think what hotels have done would be either two things here in California. One, they've relied on government subsidies. I think they're getting money from the government. But number two, um, they've been housing the homeless here in Los Angeles. And I don't know about all those programs if they're still going on, but for a while at least, they were putting homeless people in hotels. And then so they were paying the hotel a day rate instead of,
well,
since there were no
nice.
tourists, they were putting homeless people there.
Who
I don't know if
decided
that's
that?
still going on.
Gregory, who decided this politics process?
Well, I think it was, again, as I say, really the pandemic has been handled all locally. So it was either Los Angeles County or perhaps the state of California working together. But that was really a county or maybe some combination of city, county, and state in California. Probably a lot of it LA County.
No, okay,
Um,
okay, nice. I mean,
I don't really think that was federal in any way. It was all, locally driven.
and
But
you are, Gregory, you are in the state of the movie business, Hollywood,
yep.
totally closed.
Well, yes and no. Yeah, it's been very bad for the industry, and obviously it's not a good time at the box office because, I mean, I guess there are some movies being released. I stopped, I've been watching every once in a while. I'll check the box office and just see how dismal it is. Movies that are released haven't been doing very well comparatively, but there is some production because I've seen crews around town in various places. So people, they are filming.
You know,
I imagine it's probably less than it was, but there is some filming going on. Um, but our movie theaters are still closed here in Los Angeles. I haven't been to the movies in a year.
me too. I
I
miss it
don't.
so much. I
Yeah,
miss it so
and
much.
now and at some point, other places in California, like Orange County, had theirs open for a while. I think they're still closed. They might reopen now that the cases are dropping, but ours have been closed continuously since the beginning. So again, some states have been going in and out of movie theaters open. We just have had no movie theaters, and that's really hurt the box office because the two biggest markets for the movies are New York and Los Angeles. So
Okay.
when Los Angeles is closed, they know that they're going to take a huge hit at the box office, and so that's why a lot of these movies now have been going streaming, going online, Netflix
Yeah,
or
yeah, yeah.
Amazon or something or one of the
See,
other
I mean,
services.
of course, they did that for surviving, but of course, the I mean, the emotion of being seated in a movie theater is a totally different story. I mean,
Sure.
for
Yeah, I
us
love
that
going to
we are
movies. Yeah.
passionate about the movie,
Yep. Yeah, I'd
and
much prefer. And just, getting out and doing things is nice. I
yeah,
miss
yeah.
going to the library. I know it sounds strange to a lot of people, but there were just certain things like running around, even, well, okay, so now some of this, well, the Apple store is closed again. There have been phases. Sometimes the Apple store is open, sometimes it's closed. It's closed again. For a while, it was open for a couple of months. Now it's closed. So like, I miss being able to run by, well, even when it was open, you had to make an appointment then, but it's just like those little things, I can't run by and pick up something at the Apple store or check. I can't run in and pick up a book or drop something off. You certainly can't go to the movies, So it's just like all those little things in life that have been completely, just brushed to the wayside by
And
this.
how about the museum here in Italy? Were closed for many times, and now, I mean, start time to are starting to open again. With, I mean, of
Yeah,
course,
well, I've asked for So being Los Angeles, which again, the most lockdown county, the most lockdown state, our museums, to my knowledge, have never been open since the beginning of the pandemic. They closed and stayed closed. I have talked to friends around the country. I think in Chicago, the museums were open for a while. I don't know if they are now, but they were. Denver, some of the museums. So other places, other cities, other counties, other states may be different. But Los Angeles, I believe all the museums have been closed for basically a year now at this point,
You you know that
almost a year.
Gregory, from what I've heard from you, that Los Angeles is the most locked down and most heated state in USA. Uh, we are
Yep.
very similar because my region, which is Lombardy, is the same because we were for the longest time in red code and been very much heated compared the other part of Italy. So we
Well,
are
you know what it's like, man.
sorry.
I don't know that I want to compete with you, but I'm sorry to hear
No,
that we're
I
both at that level, but
I
I hope
prefer
it
that
changes.
exactly.
Let's hope, let's look forward to a better 2021 is what I say to everyone.
Absolutely, absolutely. And okay, thank you very much, Gregory. It was a nice conversation. More this time
Thank you. Likewise.
we had I mean more opportunity to go deeper in some curiosity and details of our different countries.
Well, thank you very much. And I enjoyed hearing what's going on in Italy. And as I say, I hope things get better over there too. So
And you have to come if you. I hope to see you come back very soon, which means that that things are coming back to normal again. And
I look forward to the day when I can travel again at some point to Europe.
exactly. I'm missing also to come back to USA because last time was the summer of 2019, and I hope to come back very soon.
Sounds great to me. It would be great to have you. And I look forward to coming back to Italy sometime.
We will see each other again like last time in Santa Monica.
Yes. Let's just hope there are some businesses left when you get here.
Of course, of course. Okay. Thank you very much, Gregory. Enjoy your day because you are in the middle of the day, and I will
Yes,
finish.
I'm gonna go jogging now.
Ah, you go jogging.
Yes, yeah.
Ah, wonderful. How long you jog?
An hour, usually about an hour a day, sometimes an hour and 15 minutes. Yesterday I
Fantastic.
jogged and walked. So
Fantastic. You monitor your heart or you go by your feeling?
I mostly go by the feeling, as long as I have my music and I do time it. Well, I know that in this park, four laps around the park is an hour. And if I do 5, it's an hour and 15 minutes. So it's more, I know, I watch the time, not so much the rate, but I just kind of have my routine that I get into, and maybe that's good or bad. But when I'm at the gym, sometimes we push ourselves and do more like the hit high intensity where it's fast. But when I run, I just I'm like a little rabbit. I just run around and
I remember
stay at
that
the same level the
you
whole time.
I remember that you told me that you some time to time you train in a CrossFit gym.
Yes. Yep. Yeah. 3 times a week. I've been doing the
You
CrossFit.
still doing outdoor?
Yeah, that gym was closed for several months, like all of them, but it did finally reopen. And so I've been able to do CrossFit again, which has been great. And, it's,
Cool,
and so
cool.
that and the running are what keep me
No, but
active.
running is is the basic that me also I can I can avoid to do because it's a very the basic the pillars of every sport. So give you a great stamina and prepare you for many other sports.
Yeah, I love it. I was doing jogging.
Fantastic, Gregory. Have a nice jogging and listen. Maybe we can talk in a few months and with much more positive news.
Sounds great. Well,
Okay.
thanks a lot, Steve, and have a good night over there.
Thank you very much, Gregory.
And
Listen
I
you
have to say,
soon.
ciao.
Bye bye. Take care.
Ciao. Bye. Take care.